if you're a poor guy, you
Alone
better hope
forever?
that you are very fucking handsome, okay? Because the
So
reality is
poor
that
and ugly is out.
because women, unfortunately, they go
You
for
are
men
doing the
who are
high value man
yes,
meme.
and it's true. It's something that is the reality. Men are the ones who are
Right.
struggling in this arena. Sex for women apparently is not decreased very much. So if that's true, then the sex in general for young people that's decreasing, that's coming all from the male side, which is really scary.
Women lie about what they
So
want.
true.
They say they want this, but they don't actually want that. Do you think there's any truth to that?
Don't listen to women. Listen to successful
and this
men.
We've talked a lot of relationships and how pornography and the sex industry affects relationships. I want to focus in on another industry that affects relationships that is tangential. It's adjacent, but it is not the same as the sex industry. And this is the dating industry, the dating app industry. So if you don't mind, I'd like to talk about some things like Tinder or Bumble or these other sites. What do we think of those? Do we think that's been harmful or helpful to relationships? To how people interact, how the sexes interact one with another. Do we think that it's providing a good service, or is it causing harm? What are our thoughts here, gang?
I think it's going to provide a good service because of the pandemic. I feel like when the pandemic happened, all of the normal, maybe more socialized people started getting on those sites in order to interact and to meet others. So we basically we've got the inept mixed with the ept, and I think eventually we should even each other out.
I think
Yeah,
the thing
what
about
that
yeah, go
Well,
ahead. Sorry.
no, first Taftaj, and then we'll get.
go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just say this quickly then. I think that dating apps have really increased the competition, especially for men. And so, in the past, you might grow up in a hometown and like have very little interaction with like everyone in your city or people, outside of your hometown. And now, because of the internet, it's so much easier to potentially meet people who are everywhere around you. And so the competition has really increased massively. And I think it's led to a group of men, they're called incels online, but just like in general, men who are getting less and less sex, who really are like pushed to the outskirts of the dating market. But we'll get into that later.
Well, yeah,
So-
and I was gonna
I feel like the dating app sort of environment is just kind of a result of the fact that more and more of our normal relationships are occurring online. I mean, I'm a male, so I can only refer to like my platonic male relationships in this regard, but that's where I meet most of my friends regardless. I would expect that I would also meet my romantic partners in a similar environment. And whether I am somehow bumping into them in Discord the way that I meet like my associates that I like have these types of conversations with, or whether I meet them via some other tool where we're like amassing people that have the same goal. I think that we run into a problem though, potentially, when we have sex workers that start going into places like Tinder and start advertising. And conversely, I think that this kind of has changed the way that the game is played, so to speak. Whereas traditional courting techniques aren't going to translate as well into a digital environment as what people might hope.
I think the other thing is
Yeah.
that like there's been a total collapse in the kind of stories that we tell each other culturally as far as what constitutes good behavior from men to women, what constitutes courtship, what constitutes chivalry. I think that, we look at our grandparents and they had very clear ideas about like this is how the dating scene is going to work. The man's going to pay for the meal, he's going to give the woman his coat, etc., and etc. And that paradigm really collapsed, and now we have young men who are really uncertain in a lot of ways. They don't know if they should be paying for the meal or not.
Honestly,
And that's one thing, but like I think it speaks to like the total lack of direction that a lot of these guys have.
but that's kind of good because, like, all women don't like the same thing, and all men aren't capable of the same thing. So the further we stray from this is the ideal way to find a partner, I think the more people can start to find people that they like that fit them rather than try to fit into whatever like the Joneses are.
I
Wait,
kind of
Cherry.
disagree.
No, no, I want to push back against this a little bit
Go
too, if I
ahead.
may. So yeah, I get certain like rituals, right? Like we should probably move away from those. But when it comes to like norms in society about respecting women, I think that we shouldn't. There are some norms we should normalize. We should say, hey, look, this is the way you do it, and if you stray from this way, that's an
Wait, are you
issue.
saying that not paying for the first meal is not
No, no,
respecting a
that's a
woman?
ritual, right? That's a
Yeah, so
ritual.
I'm saying
So
that
women,
like things
But
like
I
that
think
can go
women
out the
are
window.
liars.
Some people
Okay.
need you to pay, some people don't need you to
I
pay.
think women will
boils down to
say
communication.
This
things.
whole
Women will be
implication
like,
of like, oh, somebody paid for my dinner, now I'm expected to provide some sort of sexual service or something
Yeah.
as
Well,
well. I
no,
think
no, no,
that-
no, no.
hey,
No,
one
no,
at a
no.
time. Hey, gang, one at a time. Let's go Taft, Stabby, and then Alex, and then we'll go.
Okay, I think women are the worst people you can ask for a lot of like dating advice because women will tell you things about what they want and like it's just terrible advice as far as like dating. Like women will like say that they want like this kind of independence. They don't want to be like taken care of. They don't want to like have the man pay for the dinner. But like the reality is that like if you do these things, like you will be much more successful. And this is like the unfortunate niche of like assholes like Andrew Tate who like because everyone else is like not delivering this message, they're able to like sneak in advice that's like okay, that's actually like pretty decent as far as dating, but under this like guise of like total toxic masculinity. And so I think that like we have to like acknowledge the reality that like a lot of these ways of interacting between the sexes and of like courtship, like they exist for a reason and they exist because they work in a lot of ways. Like
Okay,
if you're
but
a man,
also
like you have to like harness
So did
that
arranged
alpha masculine
so
energy
did,
to an extent.
yeah, so did arranged marriages, dowries, and selling your girls. Yeah, that was super traditional too.
it's
I
a
would
bold thing to say that
that
women
And
are
back.
the
it
worst
did
people
work
in
for a
life
lot of
as
cultures
well.
for a reason.
I
so
want
hold on.
to, yeah, I want to get
This goes
Cherry a chance to
a
respond.
lot of
Cherry,
people
you
lived a
may.
lot of unhappy lives for that too. So
Is your name
I
Mr.
Yeah,
Braindead? Is your name Cherry?
it worked for the 11-year-old.
so I this is things that I've heard before. I've heard it a lot. And it's sort of painting this like really narrow picture of a woman that I will admit might work a majority of the time. Okay. That hey, she's actually going to think of you ill if you can't pay for the meal. She's gonna think of you ill if you split the check. Or she's gonna think of you ill if you don't take her to like the finest dining. You are painting the picture of a like pretty one-dimensional woman. But this also goes in reverse. There are a lot of girls who know that a guy likes if you're at least going to offer to pay a meal. So there, you will sometimes see girls do like a very shallow, hoping that nobody, like the guy won't follow through. Like, oh, I'll pull out my card real quick, when really she doesn't have any intention of it. These are just to like show you.
And they pull out their card super slowly. They're like,
You digging in your purse for like 5
Yeah.
minutes. Like, where is
But-
that?
And these are two sides of the same coin where people are pretending to be something that they are not or doing something that they are not for a favorable outcome where we would like to move to a society where people are like really honest on their dates and see if they mesh or not without playing like the bullshit pickup artist fucking games.
Okay, so Stabby Kirsch, and then Genevieve.
So those were outdated and they needed to move anyway because I have paid for a lot of my dates and I think one of the problems so what ends up happening is when Andrew Tate is there talking about like things like that and who's paying for the first date, it all boils down to, oh no, I paid $70. Poor me, I'm being oppressed. And it sounds pathetic and absolutely ridiculous. And because I'm not going to do that when I pay for it. But I will tell you guys that I have a huge problem when it comes to dating. I don't like fancy restaurants. I usually don't like their food. I don't like pasta and I don't like seafood. So there goes some, more affordable and reachable types of things. And I just feel gross and uncomfy and itchy. I've got to sit there and like we've got to grill each other like we're cops. And I think I was just lucky because my ex-husband and I, what we did is we went to a taco truck, waited for a game event on one of our days off, and we were just like walking around. And then we went to this truck that had ice cream, like this gelato ice cream, and it was the best date of my life. And I got so spoiled by that when I dated again later, it was like, well, how about we go to the coffee shop and then walk down to the bookstore? And people have told me that it's really fun dating me, even if we don't stay dating. And that's what we do as friends, because I'm one of the people that absolutely despises to sit there and get interrogated. It feels awful. I feel awkward. I don't know how to answer like, how long were you married? And you're like, and you've got to swallow and you've got to drink water really fast and you're embarrassed. I hate it. So I like I always whining about who is paying. That can be, I don't know, that needed to change in the first place. That can be settled like I'll pay for this one and then you pay for the movie or something like that. Because we're not going to boil it all down to the failure of dating because one or the other has to pay for dates. And that old fashioned thing, I'll go full feminist there and say that needs to go because it's already a nightmare. I don't want to pay to sit there and be itchy and gross and hate the entire evening.
If you're a guy and you want to date and you want to date successfully, be willing and able to like pay for things, okay? Because that will help you, all right? And like there are going to be women who like insist that they don't want to have things paid for, but like, and there are going to be like a legitimate number of like some women who do not want you to pay for things and would prefer to pay for things themselves, right? There's variance in the human population, but there's also a lot of women who are going to like say that they don't want you to pay for things. And it's the thing of like pulling the card out slowly. Like,
how do poor people date?
what do you mean? Like poor people
Two people who are poor, how can they go? Yeah, there are people who can't go out to eat ever.
Here's the thing: if you're a poor guy,
all of their
if
meals.
you're a poor guy, you better hope that you are very fucking handsome, okay? Because the reality is
poor and ugly is out.
Because women, unfortunately, they go for
you are
men
doing the high value man.
Yes, and it's true. It's something that is the reality that women do not want to date poor guys, right? So you better hope that you're very competent in another area to make up for that. Because like, if you're a guy, the reality is like having money helps you, right? And like it sucks if you're poor and you can't do anything, but like. If you have money, you should use that money.
Why are there
the onus on the man?
If we're not going,
because men are the ones who are struggling in this arena. Like, what was said earlier is that like the sex for women, and I don't know if this is true, but like just going off what's been said earlier in the conversation, sex for women apparently is not decreased very much. So if that's true, then the sex in general for young people that's decreasing, that's coming all from the male side, which is really scary. And it's reflected in every guy who's ever talked to me about their experiences with online dating. It's brutal, right?
People, I want to back you up a little bit. I'm sorry.
I'll let you, but we do have a line that we need to get to. So after you, we're going to go to Genevieve, then Kirsch, then Dre Dead.
Every time we're talking about mating or population or replacement population or even abortion, the number of poor people who are having babies keeps getting brought up. And it's really weird that, it's just going to be hard for them. Poor men who have wives outnumber like wealthy men and middle-class men who have wives by the millions, by the hundreds of millions. So
but that's because there's a lot more poor people than very wealthy people.
Exactly.
Like, of course.
Still getting but stop. They're still getting partners.
Okay, but here's the thing. If you look at like the data on what women want, they want men who are like of equal socioeconomic status or higher. Right. So like it's possible for poor men to date as long as they're competing with men who are also within the same socioeconomic bracket. The problem with Tinder and online dating apps is they expose women to a wide variety of men who are not necessarily all in the same socioeconomic bracket. And so given the option, women will prefer men who are earning higher amounts of money, right? And so that's again that Pareto distribution of a smaller amount of men who are getting more sex, and it's leaving a large amount of people like out of the population. So I'm not saying that like people who are poor, like poor men, cannot get wives. That's not true. What I'm saying is that women, if given the option, are going to prefer men who have higher socioeconomic status.
We don't want our children to work. We don't want our children to work
interrupt,
which is also, that's kind of a good thing, because like you want men to be able to provide lots for their women, and like ideally you would have like men who are very competent, who are able to have like many children and provide for all of them. Like Elon Musk is a great example.
I want to respond.
He has like so many children, and it's amazing. He should be propagating like crazy.
You'll get a chance to respond. I promise you. Genevieve's been waiting. We're gonna let Genevieve go, and then we have a Kirsch, then Braindead, then Cherry. But go on. Yeah, you guys can tackle on this. Go.
So I think that having this assumption of the most value that men can provide is money is really kind of an antiquated idea. And as we look for equality of gender, we need to move away from that. And I think that there's
liars, dude.
Some people cling to the idea because it's a lot easier to
Women will say
use
that
your
they do
wallet
want money
to woo
because it's, like,
somebody than to have
selfish
to
want
actually
money.
use your
But the fucking
personality,
reality,
right? Like if I can take someone out on
the fucking reality, and everyone knows this, is that if you have money as a man, you're more successful.
a lot less effort than me actually asking questions to get to know them, doing things that are thoughtful, that are maybe not expensive, so on and so forth. The reason I think that we run into a lot of challenges now with men in general not having as much sex or not having as an easy of time in the dating world is because the expectation of them is higher. They are now expected to bring a sparkling personality and other interesting things to the table, not just their earning power. Women are able to earn money on their own now, so they don't need somebody to pay their rent or buy them a car. What they need is somebody who's good company, who's going to make them feel good about themselves, who's going to challenge their opinions in a healthy way, and all of these other things that we can get from relationships that are not financial.
So I feel like when you do pull from the successful women, usually go for men who are as successful or more successful than them in earnings. I don't I can't jump to the conclusion that that has to do with money, because those women generally should not need money. But I do think it jumps to how that person is fitting in society. Most people who are a high earner, they are probably very smart, very assimilated with society and stuff like that. They have charisma, they are successful, and people like that want other people with charisma that are assimilated into society. So you're not going to date down just because you can't deal with poor. But most men who don't earn very much, they are socially inept, probably lack charisma, probably lack confidence. There's other things that make them unattractive that doesn't have to do with money,
All
that
these things
I
are
think women
correlated, right?
look for and
Right,
fall in love for.
this sounds like a version of prosperity doctrine. Like the people who are charismatic and successful and are great to be company, they aren't poor. That's what it sounds like.
No. What she's saying is that people who are
Well,
charismatic
they're-
are more likely to be wealthy.
Yes,
And
so there are people who will date down. Those people are charismatic. Sometimes you stay poor because of like circumstance, but I'm just giving like a broad stroke to that statistic.
Right.
So-
Like if you're filling out your
oh,
Tinder
well, if I
profile,
could.
you're going to want to choose somebody of equal or greater value because you can assume that they'll have similar ambition to you.
That's part of
So-
it. I think that, like, to be clear, it's not just that women end up dating people who are in the same or higher socioeconomic bracket. That's true, but like what I'm specifically referring to is like when you poll women and you ask them about this, they say that they prefer men who are of the same or higher.
Oh my god.
So it's
Okay,
like
but
actual
this is-
preferences, like explicitly.
I
got it, we
just
got it.
hold on. You have to let me, because I just saw a woman on Twitter brag about the fact that a man finished coming between her fucking thighs and she just let that fucking go. That's how she had sex, okay? This is the pool that you're
she
that you're
didn't
going
say
from. Women who will
anything to
literally
him.
go out there, have sex with someone, and just let them fuck their thighs instead of enjoy it. So
If you're
sometimes
having
And it's
bad
people
sex,
totally
don't know what
her
they want in a
fault for that
relationship.
You gotta
scenario.
speak up.
Like if
Ooh.
you're having sex and the guy's fucking your thighs and you don't say anything during sex,
Retarded
that's
child.
your fucking fault. Okay, I'm sorry. You have to take responsibility. If you're just letting that happen and you don't say anything, what do you expect? He's just going to like
My God.
mind read you? No, you have to like communicate with your partner.
Okay, we got
So-
we got to let Alex.
sorry.
We got to let
Yeah.
Alex.
It's okay. Yeah, it's very spirited. So that's actually online is actually how I met my wife. We've been together for 10 years, married for 8. Our anniversary is next week. But the thing is, though, is like when she and I went on our first date, it was a simple little cafe. Now, not all dating is like this, but this is why where conversation is so essential, because the main reason as to why relationships fail is because of a lack of communication. Lack of communication is why relationships fail across the board, because you don't tell them what you like, you don't tell them what you don't like, you don't ask them the questions like, okay, what kind of place you want to go to eat. Now, as far as like the man actually being expected to pay, okay, yeah, I can accept that some women might have that expectation. However, again, that's where the communication comes into effect. Now, the first date, I'm pretty sure I paid, it was years and years ago, but the thing is, though, is that usually, yes, I will pay because like I'm usually the breadwinner. But should men always be expected to pay? Well, no, not really. But again, that's where the whole communication comes into effect. Now, we can say it's like, oh, well, if a guy's like poor, he's obviously like, that's not necessarily true. There are some guys out there that are poor, but they are very charismatic. They just talk a really good game. They say, oh, well, I left my wallet at home. Or it's like, hey, do you think you can cover me this time? It's not.
May I ask you a question, Alex? May I
Yes,
ask
go
you a
ahead.
question on this?
Please
Do you
do.
think that men are more likely to be successful on getting a first date if they offer to pay? Are they more likely or less likely to get that first date in general if they say, hey, don't worry, I'll pay for it?
I wouldn't say no. I would say no, because I think it's all about the conversation you have. Because if you're interesting, I don't think the woman's going to care usually, because if she's willing to go out on a date with you because of like the way you hold yourself, the way you present yourself is so important, because confidence is really, really important, especially because usually, like, I could be wrong, ladies, so please forgive me, but usually like when a woman starts talking to a guy, she's already imagining what kind of a future she might have with this guy. And if he has her interest, she may not really care about like whether he needs to pay. That's not gonna be the first thing she thinks about. Usually she's probably wondering, does this guy carry himself well? Does he
I'm
seem
not saying that
responsible?
this is
Yeah,
like, let's say all this is equal. We have two
sure.
equally charismatic gentlemen, right? Wick
Mhm.
and Wick 2, who are super charismatic. Wick 1 says, hey, and don't worry about it, I got it for the first date. Wick 2, however, says, you know what? You mind paying for me on this too? You mind treating me? Which do you think, Wick 1 or Wick 2? Which one's gonna get the lady?
Not if you say it like
That's
that.
yeah, that's
It's gonna
great thought.
depend how
Wick
you
two
say it.
didn't communicate this before the date, right?
You have to
No,
manipulate
this is
The
her
proper way to
into
Exactly.
approach this, Wick, is to say, I do understand, and I wouldn't want to diminish your agency at all in this situation. So I'd like to offer to let you choose the restaurant that we're going to eat at and give you the opportunity to pay, at least for your half, if you'd like.
So
I would offer options personally.
Yeah.
Hey,
I
do you want me to pay? Do you
I've
want
had
to split this in half? What do you want to do?
This is
right, and
this is
but
terrible
but
advice.
there's
Don't do that.
like the
Just
worst one
pay.
I've had when somebody does that is he's gone, yeah, this is basically like a more socially acceptable form of prostitution. And I never
Oh,
saw
Okay,
him
don't
again.
say that
Ever
either.
again.
That's so
No.
fucked
Yeah,
up.
yeah, never say that. I never went back.
That's
I was so
worse.
glad that I paid and that I didn't have to like have him do the whole little sex thing, which is obviously where he was leading. But one of the best ones I ever had that also taught me was he goes, what do you say because I'm a really picky eater and women can never choose, which I was about to get mad at him for. But he followed it up so smoothly and he goes, how about I take you to my favorite? It's this family Mexican restaurant. Dress down, I mean jeans, because it's a family restaurant and we're going to eat outside. I'll pay for that one, and then you can take me to your favorite restaurant, which I was thrilled with because
That's
then
so
it meant
cute.
that I didn't have to. I
That's
know.
good.
And
That's good. That's
Great.
communication.
It can
Because one
totally
of
be
my
done in a
partners-
cute way like that, where
Yeah.
maybe you say, oh, I'm going to get this one, you can get the next one or something. Personally, it's a turnoff for me if somebody makes the money too big of a deal. Like, I don't want you to be like, I'm going to take you out to dinner and you can get the lobster, baby. Like, fuck you, I'll buy my own lobster,
I can let my dog out.
Well, here's the other
Exactly.
key
Also,
though,
like,
is that like it's
I
reciprocal,
get that there
right?
could be some discourse about it, but keep it flirty, keep it fun, Hey, I want to take you to this
Exactly.
restaurant. And then next, if you took me to that place you were talking about, that would be really cool. Or
Exactly.
whatever.
It's cute, and then it provides you something else if you're paying attention. Now you get to know what they like. So instead of just like they like Mexican food, they like this particular sauce at this particular restaurant. And if you guys get together when she's pregnant, you know exactly what to go get her to remind her of that and to make her happy. So it's just a
Or
really
or when you trigger her, to go to that restaurant and order the wrong thing.
So
don't
true.
don't
person
buy us
I am.
dead plants. Yeah, I don't want dead plants and flowers. You better go get me the enchiladas that have that toasty cheese on top, and then I'll forgive anything. That partner knows that now because of how cute
this
it was.
brings up an interesting question. This has been brought up, and I want to kind of talk about it and maybe ask the because I have you all here and you are a captive audience, and I can ask whatever questions. It's my damn show. I am curious, like what are some of the best things, the things that you were kind of leaning away from the guy or the girl, right? I want to ask the guys this. You're like, I don't know if I want a second date with this person, but then they had this line or did this saying or this sort of behavior that changed your mind. And you're like, wow, this is awesome. Because I think your stories, Tabby, was a great example of that. You're like, oh, I don't know about this. Oh, but hey, this is actually, you turned it around. You're really cool. Well, like, if anyone wants to share an example of that, I think I'd be more than interested in hearing.
Well,
Yeah,
our first
An example of the opposite.
Oh yeah,
Well,
opposite examples of two. Of
Yeah,
like
that's
it's
what
going
I have too.
swimmingly, it's going swimmingly, and then they step on this landmine and it's blown all to hell. Like that would be a good example too,
Okay.
I think.
Well, as I
But
told myself on my first date with my wife, I was like, "Don't screw this up. Don't screw this up," because that's just like my own personal thing. But the thing is, my wife and I on our first date, we stayed at that cafe for like 4 hours, and then we had another date already lined up afterwards. Is because like she and I had a lot in common, and that's what was so interesting about the both of us is that I come from a good family. I speak very highly about my family. She comes from a good, strong family, and she talked about her family as well. And like even though we're from different parts of the country. I'm originally from Oregon. She's from Michigan. But the thing is, we had so much in common and we could relate to each other so well. And I was just really interested because, my wife is amazingly intelligent and I was really, really captivated by her. And, it's just, I was really, really wanting to, have another date, and she wanted to have another date with me because like, I didn't talk about me all the time. I didn't talk about how many crunches or stuff like that or how shredded I was or something like that. I just talked about like where I come from and the kind of family I have. And like, those are the things that like, if you have similar interests, those are the things that are going to make you want to have a second date, not because of how big your wallet is. And if that person's only chasing after your wallet, I mean, do you really want to be with this person? Or it's just because, oh, well, I can't get another girl, so I have to make sure I keep paying for the meals because I want to keep bringing this girl out here. I mean, that's just the way it is, I think.
And it wasn't an interrogation. You guys got to talk about what mattered to you, and you guys got to know more about each other because there wasn't any, where do you work? How long have you lived here? Where did you go to college? What color is your car? Like, it's really creepy.
Like, I
But-
understand where. Hold on. Oh, wait. We're doing the story.
no, we could
Yeah,
you could
when-
still
when I-
talk about this, right? It's up to you.
Yeah,
I
when I
just wanted to say,
communicate,
I understand where taftaj is coming from and the advice that she's giving. But I think that advice, while it can work for a lot of women, right? It can pull that woman. It's going to be a very superficial relationship, or you are generally going to have a relationship rooted in like just superficiality.
It's an all else equal thing, right? So like I think that you can have successful relationships where like you have the woman pay, right? And I think you can have successful relationships where you trade off, 25-75 or 50-50 or whatever. If you like negotiate that and it's the right person for that. But I think that if you're giving practical advice to young men who are struggling in the dating market, I think you have to say that like all else considered, you should be willing to pay for things because it's going to be received well if you're willing to do that. And we know this because women like report overall that this is what they prefer. And
Don't you think that you're telling them that their only value is going to be money if they haven't gotten a girl by now?
No, not the only value, but it's an important value, right? Like women value security and they value competency in the job market and in the economy. And so if you're going to be successful as, someone who's dating, I think you have to be willing to play to that. And like, I'm also like, I date women, like I have a girlfriend. And so I experience this a little bit from the other side as well, where like, I know that in scenarios where I'm paying for things and where I'm willing to like provide, and not just monetarily, but like if I really go into every social situation with the active intention of like, I am going to show that I can like engage with people in a very altruistic way, that's like the maximally beneficial way to develop relationship is to have that
for
kind
you,
of altruistic mindset. No, it's like you can have a man, right? You can tell two men like
if you just agree with him and say that that's what works for you, then you can't be wrong and you acknowledge that there are
it's
people
what
that are
works for
different than
men
you.
in general. So I'm not saying it's like everyone is going to have this in like 100% of scenarios, because like you can run into a woman who's like I never want a guy to pay for any of my things. You can run into that kind of girl. But I think you have to look at the person. You have to say, hey, you go by your dating advice and you go by my dating advice. And the guys who go by my dating advice and who are willing to pay for things for women are going to succeed more often, right? And that's, at the end of the day, is the important like bedrock foundation, is that you're trying to give a dating advice for young men who are struggling. And the good dating advice is you need to like be a man and be willing to provide and to engage in economic displays of competency.
I am
Yeah,
married
it's
and I
all- it
date
all boils
outside
down-
my marriage. Oh, you can go first.
I was going to say it all boils down to preference, right? That's why you communicate with people. That's why you try to understand a person. You try to understand what they believe in, what are their traditions, their values, etc. That doesn't mess with you. You're not going to be happy. So if you're going after someone solely for the fact that they're a man and they're competent and they make a lot of money and they're handsome or whatever, you might not end up in a happy relationship, which is why half of marriages end up in divorce, right? It's that traditional model. When women could start getting divorced from men, they did it because they wanted options. When I approach people, right, it's not genuinely just a physical attraction. It's not a monetary thing. It's an emotional thing and a cultural thing and a values thing, right? If I can have some sort of value that I share with someone, I have to communicate with them. I have to understand them. I have to know where they're coming from, what they believe in, etc. That involves me asking questions, actively listening, understanding their cues, etc. And it's all about preference. What do you want? A lot of women like big guys. A lot of women like tall guys. And if the vast majority of women like, financially stable and confident men, then that's great. But there are options out there for you.
So,
Not all women are happy in these relationships.
Mr. Brandon,
Communication.
just real quick,
Yeah.
just real quick, Mr. Brandon, I do have a question for you on that, because Taft's whole point, as I understand it, is that women lie about what they
So
want.
true.
They say they want this, but they don't actually want that. Do you think there's any truth to that?
Don't listen
Like,
to women. Listen to successful
and this
men.
isn't just women as either. Like, men do this too. Men will say, it's okay, but no, we don't mean that shit. No, we really want this, and we, and we say, oh no, it's okay. You can choose what movie we see, but no, we're like, no, we really want to see SpongeBob. We don't want to see this romantic movie. We want to go see SpongeBob, right?
I think it has more with like men being like more assertive, because like the thing is like if what's it called? It's like that gag where like if a woman wants to go, it's like, where we're going to eat? It was like, just take a guess. And then when she says, oh, we're going to McDonald's. Yep, we're going to McDonald's. Like, oh, good, we're going to McDonald's. It's like that little game. It's like the whole guess game. The thing is, it's like sometimes a woman wants a man to just make the decision, because some women don't want to make the decision. That's just usually how it is. But sometimes it's good to get feedback.
Women
That's
are
where,
sheep.
once
okay?
again,
you need to
communication
lead
is the most essential key to maintaining
you
a
need to force
relationship.
women to
Because
Stop
if you
raising
don't-
your hand and just cut him
Well,
off. I'm
hold on.
sorry, but that
Real
guy looked like
fast.
he wanted to talk forever.
I'm sorry.
I'll be
I-
polite.
yeah,
I'll let everybody go on and ramble and spurge and fill out all of their points as much as they like. I'm really like
Somebody,
opposed
you're
to
a
the
blank void right
freaking
now.
of this like topic in general at this point. Like, I try to move away from like gender specific, like, this is the way that boys act, this is the way that girls act. Really good advice that I got really early on into my dating career is that people want to date competent people. You need to be able to bring something to the relationship, and then both of you go and build something together. You guys both need to want to go and do something fun. It's not going to be very fun if I go up to my friends and go, hey, I really want to go to the arcade. Do you have $20 so you can take me to the arcade? Nobody wants to go there. But if I go to my friends and go, hey, do you want to go to the arcade? I have $20. I'll give you 10. Now they're going to want to go a lot more because I just offered them money to go and do the fun thing with me. So if I go and ask a girl on a date and go, hey, do you want to go on a cruise with me? Oh, but it's going to cost you $500 for the ticket. They're not going to want to go. Versus if I go, here's a ticket for a cruise. Would you like to come with me? They're going to want to come and do the thing. You need to have something exciting and interesting about yourself that you can contribute to the group. And then the person is going to be excited about that interesting thing. If the exciting and interesting thing that you've got about you is that, hey, I'm really good at Fortnite, you better find a girl that's really interested in how good you are at Fortnite and that wants you to share that with her. Maybe that's the start of a great relationship.
And don't you
Exactly.
but if you cannot afford to continuously bring this girl on exciting adventurous trips, you understand you're going to lose her.
Then
So
be
it's
really-
almost like we're giving advice to people who have the money to do it. and telling everyone else you're fucked.
No, get
The
really
thing
good
that's
at something
exciting about
else.
you is how you skateboard.
Okay, we got
Go
to. Okay,
skateboard.
I'm gonna step in and do some control because a lot of people want to speak. Okay, so somebody you can finish, and we got Madam Genevieve and Taftaj. Go ahead.
Yeah, not saying that you have to take women out on like expensive cruises or partners out on expensive cruises to attract partners, but you need to find people that are excited to go do whatever it is that you want to do with them. Going hiking doesn't cost anything, and volunteering, hey, can I take you out hiking? Okay, now we got worries about the woods and all the rest of the things, but let's go ice skating. Figure out something
Yes.
that is inexpensive, but you need to like bring something to the table and say, let's go and do this together. It can't just be
Preferably something
wanna
that you're
stand
not
next to you.
faking. Preferably something that you're not faking. Don't pretend to like hikes with a girl and then all of a sudden on your 10th hike, like, listen, we're dating now. I've got to admit, I fucking hate the mountains. Can we stay home forever? You're not going to have a sustainable relationship that way. The same way
Right.
you would have gone broke going
Well,
to like fancy
relationships are give
restaurants.
and take, though. Some relationships are give and take, though.
Well, you have to manage
Yeah.
your communication and your expectations of the other person. I think that we all have a tendency to think like, what do I want in my perfect partner? What am I looking for in somebody that I want to date or be involved with? And we don't often flip that and think, what does my perfect partner want in their perfect partner? And am I rising to that level? Am I meeting what I think they would want from a partner as well? Because it has to be a two-way street. I think that being able to be really clear about our intentions is super crucial in that regard. In regards to who's paying for things, I think that we're kind of moving into a more modern understanding, at least in my experience and in my friends, where whoever does the asking or whoever initiates it, etiquette would dictate that that person would probably pay for the date, especially if it's a first date, right? So like if I'm going to ask Wick to join me at my favorite steakhouse, I'm going to pick up the tab because it was my invitation. He didn't say anything about going there until I was like, you know what? I think he would really enjoy this dinner. And it's a gift that I'm giving him, right? It's something that I'm being generous about because I want him to enjoy this experience, et cetera, versus, you know, if it were the shoe on the other foot, I would expect if he were asking me to go somewhere that he would pick up the tab, at least on the, as we're getting to know each other. Once the relationship progresses,
I'm just going to be
things
very
change.
clear. I'm just going to be very clear. I paid for everyone's invitation to my panel. Like all expenses were paid.
You did. I
offered it
appreciate
up
that.
front. And
Yeah.
just a real quick aside, gang, if you're liking this content and you do want to show me appreciation, please consider subbing to the channel or following if you haven't. That'd be really appreciated. But I will allow the panel to go on. So I think it was after Madam Genevieve, we had Taftaj, and then Mr. Brandon.
Yeah, I'll just be quick. I think that like the reality is that there's a lot of guys who don't have money, right? And who are struggling in the dating market. And if you don't have money, the reality is, and I agree with like somebody online, guy with the glasses, more on this, where like you have to be competent in some area. So if you are not, making fat stacks or whatever, like be prepared to develop your skills. Go to the gym, really work on your physique, make sure you're grooming correctly. Like you have to do everything because the reality is that like all else equal, money is an advantage in the dating market for men. And so you got to be willing to like if you don't have money, be willing to like really put in the work elsewise or just have like incredible banter. But
Completely agree.
yeah.
You have to have a way to demonstrate your value and demonstrate what is exciting and beneficial. How are they going to benefit from having you in their life?
You can't be poor and have the personality of a rock.
Yeah, nobody likes that.
I mean, unless you're shredded, right? Like you could be poor, have personality rock, but if you're attracted enough,
Time we're hanging out, I'm going to continue hanging out with you.
Mr. Brandon, I believe you're up.
Yeah, of course, you have to have some sort of competency, right? Like, you're going to want to see someone who also likes that, particular dominant form of competency that you have. Again, it's all about what people are looking for emotionally. It's all about what people are looking for with their preference. Well, something we haven't touched on, right? How does this work with same-sex couples? Queer individuals, asexual people, how does that work, Do we have anyone on here that would fit that mold that is, in a same-sex relationship?
Yeah, I said earlier, I'm dating a woman. I date women.
Oh, I didn't think about that. I'm sorry to ask.
And polyamorous as well. So That kind of ties back into my previous thing. If I'm the person, if I'm doing the asking of whoever I'm going on a date with, then I'm probably going to assume that I'm going to pay. If they're asking me, I'm going to most likely assume that they're going to pay.
Yeah, again, you communicate that with people, right? You have a conversation with someone
Yep.
if you like them. Ideally, you want to meet them. There's no guarantee in anything in life, right? So if you go on a date, you're not guaranteed to have sex with someone. It's just a very nice thing to do for someone, uh, even if you didn't like the date, right? So
I would say that I feel like somewhat guilty if I'm not paying for things. Because, like, if I'm dating someone and I know that I have a lot more ability to pay than they do, I think I just feel uncomfortable, like, forcing the other person to pay when I know that, like, I am not struggling financially. And I think that, like, partly what Genevieve is saying as well is that, like, because I take on the role of like the more like the asking partner or like the more dominant partner, I also tend to like fall into those male roles as well easier. But I think that like in combination with those two things, like it's much more natural for me to take on the paying role.
It
and
sounds
I
like
feel that
your
way too.
language
But
might be financially based, like giving gifts and treating people as a way that feels good for you to show them that you care about them. And I think that that's really valid.
exactly, and not everything has to be financially based. Not everything has to be emotionally based. It's balance, right? You have balance. If you like someone, you're going to want to do these things for someone because you are motivated to do those things for someone. It depends on the relationship. It depends on who's the breadwinner of the relationship.
Mr. Braindead, though, you're hitting on it, and you're hitting to Taftash's point in this. If you like someone, one of the ways you show that is by paying for things and giving gifts. And so
Yeah,
that
but
is
it's
one
not
of the
the
things that has been culturally kind of normalized for good or ill. Like, I'm not taking a side here. This is good or ill. But the whole point of this is a culturally normalized thing that people know you are interested if you express that interested by offering to pay. I
Wait,
like you're
how are you
picking on
gonna
this
butt back in when we finally got past that and got to
because
the
it's
nuanced
fun.
part? You're gonna bring
yeah.
us
I
back
was
to
trying to
ignorance.
get to a
It's
point
dragging
though.
us back
I
down.
w- I'd like to actually hit on Wick's thing there, wherein it doesn't have to be an expensive gift. It doesn't have to be an expensive meal. If you have a good time with someone, it's an emotional connection. It doesn't matter where you're at. It doesn't matter what's going on. If you feel like you have an emotional connection to this person, an attraction to this person, whatever, you're going to want to be with this person. Vice versa. And again, that all depends on your interaction with that person. So if it goes badly, likely not going to have another date. But if it goes well, I think potential. You just have to work with things.
Stabby, go ahead. Uh-oh, Stabby,
Muted.
gift us with your voice, please. Like, give us the gift of actually hearing what you have to say.
She's not muted. It looks. Oh,
Try
Okay.
again. Try say so. Oh, you're muted now. Unmute yourself and go.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
there we
there.
go.
Can you hear me? Yay. All right. I had to take these off because I had a phone call. Okay. I want to follow up on what Mr. Braindead was just saying. Um, I do want to point out really quickly. I had left before. I'm sorry, guys, but one of the things we were talking about is like I came in at the wrong time when Wick is all like, or be shredded and go to the gym, or like let's pause. If you're looking for longevity in a relationship, we were talking about prostitution, and I hate to break it to a lot of women out there who are in relationships. Yes, it is likely that they might still look at pornography. They might, there might still be sex work in their lives. So it's still kind of connected.
100%. They're
And
gonna look at
like when
pornography.
you're thinking about things like pickup artists and the red pills, notice how many times they've said they've dated a girl, but they're preaching to you about longevity of relationships, and they've broken up hundreds of times. You can be shredded and really handsome, and it's not going to last if you're a douchebag. So don't be a douchebag. Make sure that you're being honest and enjoying your time with somebody, because these relationships are going to have to take a lot of work. I'm polyamorous, and also I have some same-sex partners as well. And I have to say that the same-sex partnerships are a little bit easier only because we're already talking to one another. We're already communicating, and we're already understanding that sometimes spending time together is literally just being slobs, laying on the bed and like showing each other funny cat videos. And that's like a date. So you have to make sure that you we're not doing all of these superfluous things, and we're not talking about just money just because it's a bit easier for wealthy men to get a partner doesn't mean it's easy for him to keep it. I'm going to go ahead and point to the very obvious divorce rates around us and show that that's not happening for some people who are not quite as traditional in their relationship setups. So just try to be honest and open and understand that wanting to spend time with each other is the biggest portion of a relationship.
Yeah, and there's always established rules in relationships and things like that. It just, again, depending on your values, it depends on the kind of rules that you have in the relationship. You don't always have to go out. You don't always have to buy someone something. It's a gesture every once in a while, occasionally, whatever. It all depends on your circumstances and things like that too. Okay, a relationship doesn't need to be built monetarily; it needs to be built emotionally. So if you like to be with someone, you want to be with someone, you're gonna like them. You're gonna like doing things with them. You might like doing things apart from each other on occasion. You might like doing a lot of things together a lot of the time. It's varied. It's diverse. It's learning how to communicate with people to understand what you like and don't like. And if you dislike more than you like, there might be a physical attraction, a monetary attraction, but it's not going to work out. So yeah, there
Okay,
you go.
I do want to address that because I think there's something there to be talked on when it comes to dating and communication and things like that. I think that's worthy of discussion. But I do know some people have to go. I know somebody has another panel coming up, and I do want to say we are winding this down. I do want to give people in the audience a chance to ask questions of the panel, right? And so if you have questions, just highlight your message. I'll ask the panelists it. But I want to give somebody a chance to have an outro and to have his final say before we let him go off here. So we are winding down, gang. We do have a couple more things to say, but I just want to appreciate you guys for being here, audience. And again, if you have questions of anyone on the panel or the panel in general, please ask them now, and I will try to get as many as we can before their patience runs out with me, and I have to let them free into the wild. Please, somebody.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to get out of here. Yeah, I hate to have to run. I've got to get over to
You're
visit
so
Stardust and do the whole
correct,
Chaos
ambivalent
Cast thing.
bastard.
I do want to
This is
thank you again so much for the
every
opportunity
time.
to be
That's
here.
so accurate.
Generally, as far as the topic goes, the society and the way that we approach relationships has changed a lot. COVID has affected a lot of things. It pushed us to the internet, and the way that we're finding new partners has changed. We've also begun to destigmatize the sex industry very dramatically and normalize it to an extent. And the internet and COVID has made it a far easier thing for a lot of people to access. And again, this is having like a lot of effects on society as things change. But this isn't a bad thing. We just need to like roll and adapt and be like, oh, wait, no, this all makes sense. Because frankly, it all does make sense. We just need to make sure we're not hurting anybody. Wick, I want to thank you guys all again for letting me hang out and chat. I look forward to having future conversations with a number of you. Cherry, I understand we have an interview coming up with myself and Queen Alexa at some point in the near future. I hope anyway. Maybe we'll get that put together. But anyway, I look forward to chatting with you all again soon. See you guys around. Thanks for letting me be here. Bye now, though.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
To the panel in general. I do have a comment on what Mr. Braindead said, and I'm curious how he would respond, and the rest of you would think. So we're talking as if the connection has already been made. You've arranged that first date, and that's why it's important to communicate. The person is already interested in you. But as in my experience, and as I've seen from other people's stories and anecdotes, getting that attention in the first place is becoming increasingly harder for certain categories of men who aren't monetarily wealthy, men who aren't physically attractive, men who have trouble communicating, right, in general, and being charming and witty. And this has become a greater and greater problem. As Taftaj has mentioned, the competition has increased 100-fold before social media was a thing. You didn't have to compete with everyone in a 25-mile radius, right? Like you only had to compete with a small group of people that
People at your church
the
or
person
your
you were
school.
interested in knew, right? And so like this is all well and good, but much of the problem that people are seeing is actually getting past that first hurdle of being noticed and actually being able to be engaged. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think
Yeah.
people
Yes.
struggle with long-term relationships too. And I also think there's been like a breakdown of societal norms regarding long-term relationships and, decreased emphasis on the importance of family and of relationships and of marriage. And it's definitely fallen out of favor. And the modern way to live is as someone who's single for a long time and not super concerned with that, someone who's more concerned with their career and whatnot. And so, there's so many other exogenous factors that have really made it a lot harder for people to maintain these long-term relationships.
I think that in general, we're having to learn how to deal with this onslaught of options, not only in dating, but really in every aspect of our lives in like the modern world with technology. We have so many choices for what we can watch. We have choices for what kind of food we can have delivered. We can just swipe and have choices for who we want to date. And it is kind of overwhelming for our brains, I think, a lot of time. And we need to take a break from that, I think, to kind of reset occasionally. But also, I think that kind of in response or to build on Taftaj's point, a lot of people in our generation and also the younger generation, millennials and Gen Z, are products of divorced parents. And so a lot of us saw these kind of difficult relationships and how much pain could be caused when they don't work. And I think that did instill kind of a bit of hesitancy in some people to feel like they want to protect themselves from going through that painful situation as, in their own relationships.
And single,
Well,
mother households are some of the worst things for developing young men. And, one of the greatest predictors of adolescent and adulthood engagement in crime. So, yeah, there's a huge downstream effect socially and culturally if you are having like a breakdown of familial relationships.
well, I think a lot of it kind of comes down to is like some people in the younger generation, some of them like kind of give up on a relationship like sometimes a little too easily. Like at the first sign of trouble, they just think like, oh yeah, if I get married to this person, I'm just gonna have like nothing but sex all the time. But then they realize there's actually more to a relationship than just having sexual intercourse. And then like at the first sign of trouble, like they think life is just supposed to be easy and everything like that, but it's not. It takes a lot of work. And like, especially like if you want to have longevity, you have to take into consideration that there's gonna be problems along the way. I'm not saying you guys are gonna fight each other. I'm just saying there are going to be issues along the way, because after a while, she's going to wonder if you're committed, or if he's going to wonder if you're committed. Then you two are going to want to move in together. There's a lot that kind of plays into it. But again, it all comes down to like how the couple communicates with one another. And if the communication is not there, if they don't want to tell each other certain things, maybe it's because they're not ready, or it's just there are some things they just don't tell their partner, period. It's because of like trust issues. There's so much that really plays into when it comes down to why relationships fail, whether they're short-term or long-term, really.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, we don't have good examples of healthy relationships, and then we also don't have good examples as a result.
We missed all of that. You were roboting. Can you try repeating that, please, Madam Genevieve?
Sorry. Another consequence of not having healthy adult relationships visible and accessible to us as children is that we also don't learn how to work through conflict in a healthy way and how to problem solve and compromise.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Were you talking about the approach and how to like actually talk to people, how you initiate things? Was that what you were harping on?
Harping on what loaded term there? But no, I was simply mentioning, right, that approaching, like they're approaching women or approaching men, for that matter, right, is something that our culture. Well, let me start over. The approach as a culture is heavily weighted toward men. Men are expected to be the aggressor, for lack of a better term, to be the initiator, to be the one who starts the ball rolling by expressing their interest initially. And that is an issue, right? It has become an issue in our society, especially for men who just aren't good at that and who don't have any outward, like peacock style ways of displaying their worth, such as wealth or looks. And
Exactly.
that's become a problem. That's what I was saying.
there need to be more options for people who don't have the advantages that the so-called default have, right? So you find out what demographics need the most help, and you try to figure out how to help them. Help isn't doing this isn't universally, one way or one standard, right? It's all about your values. No, me personally, I am the person who likes to pursue. Generally, I'm a pretty social person, so I like to go out, uh, and socialize, and I will start conversations with people, and we'll just have casual conversations. And maybe if I've interested that person enough, and or if they've intrigued me enough, I might be ballsy enough to ask if they want to hit me up on social media or even their number, text, things like that. Uh, and that's just me personally. I like meeting people in person. Again, online dating can be a preference for people because it's easier because of work or whatever. You might not have the time to go out and do stuff like that. That's also fine. Uh, there's some issues with online dating, but of course, there's an issue with dating in general because we instill a lot of toxicity in culture, and that's usually taught more towards the masculine part of culture, right? So where's the breakdown, right? Where's the breaking point? Like what's broken, right?
The
And
welfare
also,
state.
my generation, I'm a millennial, we're more we're less likely to be able to have the advantages that our parents had and maybe our grandparents, if they were boomers, to be able to have more stable financial opportunities and stuff like that. Because we are preyed on, we are exploited a lot, and that falls into the whole dating thing too.
I
It's
just
all correlated.
We
Wick,
gotta get other people in here, so we're gonna let Cherry go, and then yeah, if you want in, raise your hand, and then Stabby, I guess.
Wick, I just want to say that I watched way too many lectures about prostitution and the legality or of the future prospect of the career between the issues between legalizing versus decriminalizing. I watched too much of that shit for where this panel went. Okay.
We can get back to it. We can talk about how, because this is all interrelated, Cherry. It's all interrelated. The way that men and women interact, I would assert, has been influenced detrimentally
So you're
by pornography.
Whoa,
okay.
quickly. I think that like another thing to consider here is that like the degree to which your culture, your nation, is able to produce successive generations is foundational to its success. And I think it's really worrying when you see like the steep decline of birth rates across the developed world. And the number one thing that like correlates with this beyond anything else is the strength of the government programs and the welfare state. And so I think that in the past, you had people who were really invested in creating relationships that were long lasting and that would produce many children that would then grow up and be able to provide for them. And that was there was a real sense of filial piety in that, and the roles of mothers and fathers and sons and daughters and how they related to each other. And those things have been sort of replaced by the modern economic system and the ability for the government to step in as a kind of surrogate parent, where you can live a life where you make a lot of money when you are young, and that goes into a pension fund, and you live off of that, and you don't actually need to have that real stable relationship. So I think that if we want to preserve humanity and civilizations,
No.
I think we have to fundamentally destroy this kind of
No,
this
the
kind
past
of
generation want to
maternal
preserve
Hey,
their
hey,
ideal.
Wait, I was
relationship
supposed
that
to
the
be next.
state has, and we need to bring back the traditional forms of relating to each other and developing relationships.
Okay, so
I was
a lot of
supposed to
people
be.
want to
I
get
was
in here.
supposed to be.
And also,
Stabby, go
men should
ahead.
have multiple
But
wives.
I was supposed to be next. I was actually supposed to be next, and we got to listen to something read off of a 4chan thing that we've heard a billion freaking times. And first of all, it's 100% completely wrong. One of the first, yeah, it is
It's
taftaj.
so right. It's
I mean,
100% right.
like no, it's not. Go to a church and find your mate there, because
Okay,
that's where the
civilization's
traditional
not
are
going
supposed
to
be
exist
finding
in
it.
the future
No,
if the birth rate does not
Stop.
increase.
So go to a church and find your partner. Now let me finish, because I was supposed to be next before Taftaj went on another pre-written monologue thing. So Taftaj, listen. Actually, I just want to point something out. One of the things we saw with single parent homes, you mentioned that, and that's when you started on this some kind of a like incel rant or something. We had widows. We had millions of widows, tens of millions of widows around the United States, around all over the world after World War II. They were all raised by a single parent home. And one of the biggest things that we did is all of society went, oh, fuck, we really fucked up. We have to help raise these kids as quickly as we possibly can. They're going to have to be mature sooner. Kids were still a little more mature sooner. The growth of the teenager began like roughly in the 20s. So they, most like their big sisters or big siblings and stuff had jobs when they were kids. So they kind of got this little bit of a break, and then they lost their fathers, and they didn't have that break. And what we did with those single family homes, because they were widows, we never talk about it because we find that to be moral, and we find divorce to be immoral. So we don't want to talk about how the entire community and all of the United States banded together with these programs to help these children, because we took their fathers from them to the tune of 80 million fucking people. Like that's absolutely bonkers. And we still managed to keep our children in focus. One of the problems with this particular panel is we've been talking about kids getting a hold of pornography being something we absolutely want to stop. And we've also been talking about human trafficking with children and how we want that to stop. That's the only time we focused on children whatsoever. And when we're talking about dating, when we're talking about men and women, divorce, widowhood, widowers, we're talking about a fear that we have that is based off of children, not men at all. So you're wrong about those programs, because really quickly, Wick, in Scandinavia, where they just now did the child support stipend instead of child support coming from the man, it's not only that they found out that these couples were getting along better and that these children were being better taken care of and that men were finally not held underneath the ridiculous strictures of child support, but they also found that divorces began to drop, because once the couple had a child care stipend and the entire country was focused on children, the stressors that helped lead to a divorce began to drop. So no, you don't get to do, the nanny state government. Everybody should just like be
I
left
wanna
out there
let,
on their own.
No,
and let's
I
get married
I
now.
don't know what you
wanna
think
give
is
Taftaj
exactly
a chance to
wrong,
respond.
but like it's absolutely true. The biggest predictor for whether or not a state has declining birth rates is the relative strength of the government's programs, especially those that exist for people later in life. Right. So like it's possible that you have better divorce rates, but like there have been
I'm
lots
sorry,
and lots of
but wait,
government programs.
Hey,
That's
Gabby, you gotta
because
let her finish, but then and a couple people
Yeah.
need to go. So I'm gonna let Taftaj finish, and I'm gonna let a couple people have their outro, and then if you guys want to keep fighting, I will keep hosting it.
A
But
lot of people
Taftaj, please finish.
a lot of people who are much smarter than me have tried to design government programs in order to encourage people to have children and to raise children. And pretty much across the board, they've made just tiny dents in the birth rate. And you see this, everywhere, where lots of governments are really invested in trying to increase this, but they don't seem to work. And so like the one thing really is the strength of the welfare state.
Okay, so I'm gonna let you a chance to respond, Savvy. I am, but we'd have to give a couple people an outro.
Okay.
It's Jerry
Okay,
has to
I'll save
go.
one.
Okay. Mine's
Okay.
gonna be super quick. I gotta go. Bye.
Okay, love you, Jerry. Bye.
Love you,
And Alex
Jerry.
has
Bye.
to go as well. So bye. I'll shout you both out in chat. Gang, go give them a follow. Go get them some attention too. It's Cherry and Alex Kirsch, both excellent. I'll shout them both out in chat. Thank you.
Hey, take
But
care.
you may respond, and then we have other people wanting in. So
And then, yeah,
Wanna give some
absolutely.
insight onto this as well.
Yeah, I'm going to be super fast, I promise. The reason you're seeing a lowered birth rate and the reason we gained 5 billion people in less than a century. That's never happened before. And we're probably in the next century going to be just fine as well and keep climbing. So the reason you're seeing a lowered birth rate is because I don't have to have 8 children to maybe hope that 3 of them survive. I have a 100% success rate. Both of my children have hit puberty. My son is through it. That's
not what
2
birth rate
children,
means.
2 pregnancies,
Oh,
100%. If I wanted to do something like that only 100 years ago, I needed to have roughly 12 pregnancies with miscarriages and 8 live births to even hope to have 2 surviving children. So that's why you're
It
seeing the
doesn't
falling
explain
birth
why
rates.
people
It's like people
continue
don't
to
know
have
how
children.
bad things were 100 years ago.
Okay, yeah, I'll finish closing statements quickly. Just in regards to like advancing medical technology, The reason why we suspect that it has to do less with advancing medical technology and more the role of the state is because you can control for the advancements of medical technology and medical access. And so you can look at two different countries, and one will have better or worse medical access, but the better predictor is the role of the state. So that's why I bring up the welfare state and its relationship to families. In general, I talk about politics. I have very syncretic views. I have politics that are kind of hard to pin down, but if you're interested in seeing more, I stream taftaj on Twitter and Twitch, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. And I have a few accounts. If you Google taftaj, you'll find my main Twitter, and that has a link to my Safe for Work, just politics Twitter as well.
Yeah, I want to thank you for coming on, being willing to share your experiences and share your syncretic views, which I think needs to be shared more. So appreciate having you on. Love to have you on again in the future.